Alrighty. Okay, we got that running once again. Apologies for the interruption. If you saw that from my end, we're streaming remotely over into the Hive On channel. Guys, welcome. My name is Seth. So let's go ahead and get this stream started. Welcome. My name is Seth, and I've been asked by the Hive On team to be your host in the English version of the quick and tactical overview of the new hiveon.com. Well, some UI refresh, but also some commonly asked questions about how to troubleshoot your Hive OS rigs, formerly called Hive OS, but into the future known as Hiveon OS. The pool is already Hive On, and so they're doing a brand unification around the new name, Hive On. So yeah, guys, we'll jump right into it. To give you an idea of what we're going to be working with, today we will be starting with a little bit of beginner workflow. So if you're brand new to Hive OS or Hive On, you're in the right place. Okay, so we're going to start by addressing how to get started, very, very quickly how to get started with Hive On. And then if you are an intermediate user or if you're an advanced user and you have some questions about some troubleshooting that has maybe been a little more difficult after you've already gotten your rigs flashed, you've already gotten your rigs running on Hive On OS, don't go anywhere. We are going to go over that stuff. So please don't lose heart. Please don't click away, and be sure to share this stream while we're live. So if you have more questions towards the end of this stream, we're going to be able to take those questions and answer them directly. So thank you again to the Hive On team for having me be your host on the English-speaking version of this stream. If you need this content in Russian, that was already debuted yesterday, and you can find that by going directly to the Hive On channel here on YouTube, looking under the previous live streams. You'll be able to find that localized in your language. Right? There's really no need to listen to me in English. If you need it in another language, there may be some additional language options coming soon, but this is your English version of the tutorial and the Q&A. But the new and updated user flow is going to be fun, guys. Let's jump straight into it. If you're brand new to this whole thing, like, how do you get started? Like, what do you do if you're brand new to mining, especially with GPUs, maybe on a gaming rig you have lying around? Well, the easiest thing to do is just go to hiveon.com. As you see here, this is the new web address, so new URL. If you try to navigate to hiveos.farm, you'll be redirected to this anyway. So just bookmark the correct address. That's the first thing. As with anything in cryptocurrency or DeFi, you want to be going to the correct websites, and be sure you're bookmarking the correct websites, and especially HTTPS versions of those websites, so you know you have a secure link to the correct site, right? Like, thankfully, there hasn't been much of a problem with any kind of spoofing with Hive On, the Hive On team. But cryptocurrency, being what it is kind of a security first mindset. So be sure that you're going to the correct site, and be sure that you definitely have that bookmarked. But that's the first thing. And then before you do anything else, before you try to flash a rig, before you try to get started with mining on Hive On, be sure that you have an account. I know that sounds like kind of like basic 101 level, but here's the thing. People get really excited. They want to download a mining piece of software, and they want to ask questions about, like, okay, is it going to be on this operating system or that operating system? Just chill out a little bit and start by just going to Hive On, create the account, right, where it says sign in. Now, I'm already signed in on this browser. So if I do click on the sign in button, then it will bring me directly to some of my farms, but we'll get to that in just a minute. If you're brand new to the Hive On workflow, even this might look a little bit daunting at first. So we'll go over all this, guys. I'm going to make sure that the text size is large enough for even the old guys in the audience with the, got to wear the spectacles. But yeah, be sure that you've actually gotten started by logging in, registering. I'm already logged in, so the likelihood of me actually being able to do this, very low. It's going to bring me directly to my farms. All right, so it gives me an overview of my farms. But you'll need to register there, and then you have the option to download and install an image of Hive OS or Hive On OS to a flash drive. Why would you use a flash drive? Well, they're cheap. They're really inexpensive. I mean, gosh, it's become such a regular part of everyday life. I've got probably a half dozen just lying around right now that I don't use for much. They're relatively resilient. They don't have too big a problem with being with overuse in terms of the write and rewrite cycles. And the way that Hiveon OS is designed, the version of Linux that it uses, decreases the number of writes and rewrites that you have to do to that USB drive so much that you can go many, many months, in some cases years, without ever having to replace that drive. The better option is to go with an SSD, something that, like a 2.5-inch SSD. A 32 gig SSD costs less than a much larger hard drive. And the point is not really so much to hold a lot of capacity on that drive as much as to make it resilient to the number of times that the operating system has to write and rewrite to the drive. So an SSD will outlast a USB drive, little thumb drive, by many multiples, right? So it'll go where a USB drive might only last a few months, or up to a year or a couple of years, maybe outside max. You're going to get that SSD under the same conditions to last several years, probably for the life of that mining rig. Realistically, there are a lot of users of Hiveon OS who've reported that their drives, their SSDs, have lasted several years. They haven't had to replace them. So that's the first thing, guys. You want to sign up for that account at hiveon.com, which will redirect you to the OS page. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to download an image. And if you're already logged in, we're from the homepage here. We can very, very simply click on the plus symbol and then add worker. So maybe you're sharing an account with, say, like a family member or in the same household. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're one of those lucky people who, maybe you married up and your wife is super into mining. She's already got a Hiveon account. That's how you would just add one of these accounts. Very, very simple. Add one of these workers very, very simply. It's just add a worker. Once you do go through that, though, it's as simple as deciding what type of worker you need to add. If you've got ASIC rigs lying around or FPGA rigs that are in those smaller form factors like the Black Miner, you can go this path. If you've got a computer with a GPU or a CPU or you want to do hard drive mining in it, then you simply click this path and then follow the prompts to download and flash the image onto a little USB drive. They say you can connect a rig ID. You can do use the flasher tool as well. Maybe you want to use a laptop that has an embedded hard drive and you want to just like write the image to that hard drive or that SSD that's embedded on that laptop, or maybe you have some other equipment that you feel just fine about basically turning the entire rig into a Hiveon machine. This is how you would do that. So let's see. Comments are coming in. Hey, definitely appreciate these comments coming in. Do make sure that if you have questions, go line those up in the comment section now for later on when we go to a more interactive live Q&A. We're going to go over some other material here for beginners and then jump into some of the intermediate typical FAQ. And then if you have questions, by all means, make sure that your questions are here. The Hiveon team is in the chat as well, and we'll be providing resources in the comment section live as we go. This is meant to be extremely interactive for you so that it is as valuable as you need it to be. So make sure that you're vocal and you're interactive so you can get any questions that you have answered and any help that you may need with your mining operation. Get that help right now. That's what this is intended for. All right. Somebody's saying subtitle is required. But we do have a great question asking about why does it constantly stop mining? Kind of intermittent, but sometimes it stops. We'll get to some of this stuff. That's great. So this is the simple format right there. Just installing the rig to a drive like an SSD or a hard drive. But a flash drive, again, is the simplest way to handle that. It's just, it's really, really straightforward. Beyond that, there are some resources that we can show, and specifically, what I want to do is show you the page for this. So I'm showing you how to get started, but additionally, there is a full breakdown of this process on Hiveon, under Getting Started Dashboard Setup. So the knowledge base is extremely well done. The UI has been set up in such a way that you can quickly get through all of the beginner level questions about working with farms, creating a farm, and setting up wallets and such. It's all right here in a very easy to read format. So the links to all of this content here as well that's on the Hiveon webpage is going to be available in the description of this video. And of course, if you just go to hiveon.com, you'll be able to navigate to this and find the beginner tutorial in that format. If that's faster for you, right, you can just go there and read through it really quickly, have that bookmarked if you need to forward it to anybody else who's getting started as well. So just to say, it's been made as simple as it can possibly be, which, you know, for content creators in the space, maybe a bummer, right? Like we've been making our own rogue tutorials for a while, and you know, with our own style and stuff, but the Hiveon team has done a brilliant job of just laying this out very, very simply. So it's not too difficult to follow, as well as a getting started worker setup page. So let me pop that open just so you can see briefly. This is the dashboard, but another page that is dedicated just to setting up a worker. So if you are that beginner that's saying, like, how do I get started? The knowledge base is really, really good. So if you prefer written content, but just briefly, the easiest way to do it is setting an account or working with an account that already exists. If you're sharing an account with in the context of a business or, family relationship, friends and family really close, then that's the easiest way to do it. Including how to assign a worker name, any tags that you want to add to it. We've gone over this in depth in some other tutorials. If you check the channel on how to assign tags. So very, very useful if you need to figure out like how to segment all of your farm, especially as you're growing your farm. You definitely want to have those descriptions for your tags and the description for each individual worker set up well so you don't get lost after the fact. But every one of those fields, I mean, some of them they're optional, but they're all recommended. That's why they're there. They're inherently very, very useful. So try to use as much of that as you can. But that's pretty much it, guys. That's about as simple as it gets, right? Log into an account, set up a disk. It's probably easiest to use Etcher.io, the Balena Etcher writing software, or the flashing software. It's historically been what most people use. And so you can download that. It's cross-platform. You can use it on Mac OS. You can use it on Linux. You can use it on Windows, and it will let you write to either a USB flash drive or to an SSD. So, yeah, that's the easiest way to move forward with just getting started there. But let's talk a little bit more about so connecting to a dashboard and then how to add a flight sheet. This is some of the most common questions, is how to create a flight sheet and how to make a more robust flight sheet. Especially since the low hash rate models have come up with from NVIDIA, people keep asking like, okay, well, how do I set up a flight sheet in Hiveon so that I don't miss out on any potential hash rate for my Team Green cards, right? Some people have been setting and forgetting their rigs for many, many months and are now wondering, okay, well, I've got to think about it again. What do I do? Well, yeah, we can go back to this screen here. And when we add rigs, as before, the plus symbol up above our farm, once we've logged in or registered, gotten an account, logged in. Also, it bears mentioning, just really briefly, when you create your user account, be sure to go to settings and turn on 2FA. Can't stress this enough. Security first. Within cryptocurrencies and especially within mining, turn on 2FA. Yeah, it's another step when you log out and then logging back in. It's another step that you have to go through, but it will save your future self some headaches, right? Your account is very unlikely to ever be hacked or compromised if you have 2FA turned on. So do not ignore 2FA. But then creating a Hive OS flash drive, we're just going to go as simple as possible right here. So there's the Hive flasher. I mean, it's about as simple as it can be. This is actually this is the flashing utility. That's funny. But go to download, and then this will automatically redirect. There you go to Hive OS. Got all the various installer files here. All right. Yeah, the whole new UI workflow, you can choose to install rigs that are already running a previous OS. Download the installer, and I apologize. I went over to the Flasher tool, which is a little bit different. I'm going to create a new folder just called Hiveon. There's my Hive OS installer, a Hiveon installer. And it knows that I'm going to flash us to a Windows system. So see that .exe, it is executable. So be aware of any kind of warnings that may come up. And I'm going to go back here, and because I'm on Linux, make it a little bit simpler. I can always revert back to previous versions if I think there may be a reason to do that. Maybe I've already tried one out and I want to go to a previous version, not the latest version of the Hive agent, but I can download that as well. What does this do? Why would we download this instead of a full operating system image? Well, it's simply the agent for Hiveon that lets that machine run Hive OS. It's really that simple. And it's pretty cool, actually. We've gotten some reports that for macOS, there are maybe a couple of additional steps. So do be patient with that, especially with macOS. The macOS has a very aggressive security policy in place. So you may have to turn on developer options from within your operating system settings, and then you may have to manually approve the installation of a new DMG or disk image from the Hiveon team. So just be aware of that. There are increased security permissions on macOS if you're trying to get a macOS based system to start mining. Maybe you got a little Mac, one of these newer Apple Silicon Mac Minis that you want to try to get running on some kind of an algorithm, mining algorithm, which, you know, good for you if you want to do that. But there's a little bit more work that needs to be done. All right, so I've got all three now. I'm going to go ahead and just download the latest of all three to my little Hiveon folder here. Hey, look at that. So, and it looks like it's not going to download for macOS. It's not going to download a DMG. It is going to download an image, and that's so that may also be for some macOS users. That may be outside of what you're typically like using, what you're comfortable with. So just be aware. You're going to have to unzip this file. It is an archive. You're going to have to unzip that the image or deal with a .xz file. So just be aware of that. Alrighty, and just checking in on comments intermittently, just so you're aware, keeping an eye on comments. So as you have questions, do bring them up in the chat. All right, let's use an image writing app, and they've got the links provided there very conveniently. Belina Etcher, it's going to open up in a new tab. But you can download that, of course, if you've already got it installed. It'll look something like this. So we'll keep that open for just a minute, jump back in. But if you need it, you can download it directly from the belina.io site. Launch the app by connecting the SSD or the USB drive to the system that you want to install it from, whether it's Windows or Mac OS or Linux. So yeah, but again, top recommendation is going to be to have an SSD. Then be sure that you have a USB to SATA adapter. That's just the easiest way to make that work, especially for this step. If you want to install your Hive OS, once it's fully flashed, want to install it via SATA, that's just fine. It'll run just great, right? The bootloader will work just the same without any problems at all. But for this step, much easier to just have it connected via USB. And then now we're going to download a rig configuration file. That's what rig.conf is. It's basically just a text file, but it's a custom text file that is used by Hive OS or Hiveon. So there we go, filter.conf, and it needs to be named rig.conf. Do not rename this. Do not rename it. Okay, it has to go onto the drive that you're about to flash. And what it's going to do is inside this file, we're going to take a look at this for just a brief moment so that you see. For beginners, I don't want you to be confused at all by what's happening right now. So let me open this up. I'm going to right click and going to open it up with a text editor. I just want you to see the context or the contents of what's inside of this rig.conf file. You see right here, it's got the farm hash for the farm where we're adding a worker. And what that's going to do is it's going to, the moment that this rig boots up with Hiveon OS and it sees this rig.conf file, this is going to identify to the operating system, oh, when I do call back to Hiveon, to the dashboard, I need to call back to this unique farm. Once it does that on first boot, it can then be assigned a rig name if you wanted to, if we didn't already do that earlier the other way. This way, still very simple. Once it phones back to the Hiveon dashboard, from within the dashboard, you can very simply rename it. It will then call back to the rig from your dashboard on hiveon.com. And then you can work from a graphical user interface online on the dashboard. But the cloud dashboard is extremely easy to use for anybody who's just getting into mining. If you don't want to have to keep editing configuration files like this, just know it comes perfect. It comes exactly as it's supposed to be by using the process that we're going through right now. But here we go. So here we go. It has to be added to the Hive OS drive root folder, meaning you jump back just a step or two. So once you've finished using the Balena app and you fully flashed this drive, you must leave it installed. Keep it plugged in, right? Keep it plugged in so that you can then drag this rig.conf file into the root folder of that newly flashed drive. That's the process. Then just plug this drive into whatever the system is that you want to run. See the little visual representation of all these GPUs here. Just plug that in either via USB or SATA if you want to. Again, get much more life out of it. Plus, if it's plugged in directly via SATA, you're going to get faster reboot times. If you, in the event that you ever have to do a reboot, you're going to be moving much faster that way. And then click finish. Once you've booted that system up, it will then show up in this view that you see right here. See all of these rigs. I'm just going to show the rigs that are online. I'm going to filter through this and just show anything that's online. But as that new rig comes online, it'll just show up with a generic name, and we can then click into it and we can make the changes that we need to from the dashboard. If that's your preferred way of working on Hive OS, it's a lot simpler for most people. All right, I'm going to adjust my my webcam just a little bit there. All right, and just a reminder, as questions come up, do ask them. They're going to be deferred towards the end as we have a more live Q&A. Liver. We'll make it trend on crypto Twitter, on mining Twitter. But if you have questions, do queue those up. So we want to see that. But let's go ahead and add a flight sheet. That's the second most common question. Not just how do I get started and how do I add a rig, but now how do I add a flight sheet? It's quite simple. We can go to our overall flight sheets area. And I think I am going to go ahead and just swap over to flight sheets. And as it is right now, yes, I am currently looking at a screen with no workers on this farm. Deal with it. All right. So as I scroll down from this tab, I can see that I have a bunch of preferred flight sheets, right? With Flux, Ethereum, Litecoin, Raven, dual mining for several coins here, and then others as well. So this can be made favorites over time. But how do I create a new flight sheet? Hey, don't like that very much. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started here. It's about as simple as it gets. Begin typing in the ticker symbol of the asset that I want to mine, the coin that I want to mine. We're going to keep it really simple and go with Ethereum. You might want to mine to NiceHash. I'm not going to judge you for that. You figure out what's best for your mining goals. But I'm going to click on Ethereum. It's that simple. Now I'm going to add a wallet in this case because I want to just use an example. Let's see. And for our example, etherscan.io. And I'm going to, just as an example, right? Let's just say I really feel like being generous, right? I really, really feel like being generous. And I want to go to, say, the Ethereum Foundation. Let's see, we should have ETH Dev. There we go. I really want to contribute to the ETH devs. So I'm going to go ahead and just like copy their address and put it right here under the address field. ETH devs. We love you. All right, done. And I can save that as a global wallet so that any rig in this farm can use this wallet if I want. I don't have to save it as a global wallet, but I can save it as a global wallet. It just makes it simpler in the future to deploy this wallet into flight sheets across the farm as it grows. All right, so we've got our little donation address for the Ethereum devs. Your mileage may vary. You can choose to donate to whoever you want. Hey, check it out. Hiveon is the top recommendation, which is great because as you add your rigs to the Hiveon pool, they are free to use on Hiveon OS. So it is an ecosystem. And I'm going to automatic. Hey, here we go. So it's got automatic geography for depending on where you are in the world. It's just going to ping the closest possible pool server. I may want to only stick with, there we go. Just SSL URLs. And then, check pool latency. I don't really need to do that for this because it is automatic. So I'm not going to worry about that for Hiveon. It's just as simple as going to auto. Click apply. And then I have to select the miner. This is where, you may have different goals. You may have some different considerations. You may have, for example, an LHR NVIDIA card, and you're going to need to look for optimizations for whatever your specific rig is. I'm partial to Phoenix Miner because I mine on mixed rigs. So I like being able to mine with both NVIDIA and AMD at the same time. And I've been using it for some time now. So I'm comfortable with that. But you may need to use something else for your goals. You may also be deciding that you want to mine on CPU. So you may want to use a mining software that is unique to that condition too. Or you may have an Ethereum ASIC, and you can choose that by just going to ASIC miner if that flight sheet applies to Ethereum ASICs that you have in your farm. But for my part, it's going to stick with Phoenix Miner and then say Hiveon donation to ETH Dev Wallet. Now, my flight sheet has a really descriptive name. Cannot stress this enough. As you go, as you're setting up new mining rigs, right, and new workers in your farm, and as you're setting up new flight sheets, it pays to be really descriptive in these fields for the names so that you remember what you've set up along the way, and it's just easier to work with down the line. So do be sure you're as descriptive as you can be. And of course, I can also just import all of these settings from a file, or if I have it all, saved to my system clipboard, I can just paste that in, right? But if I need to run several miners, check it out. I can do an additional miner. And I've showed this before in tutorials on Hiveon. But let's just say, ooh, wow. I've got to actually type in the ticker symbol. I typed in Monero, its full coin name, but I need to type in XMR. Maybe I want to mine on the CPU, XMR, or maybe something a little bit more exotic, maybe slightly newer, maybe Raptorium. Maybe we've got a beefy CPU that I want to use for Raptorium. It's no problem. I don't have a Raptorium wallet here, but you see where I'm going, right? I will still need to go through this process. Maybe for the purposes of this demo, easier for me to just stick with XMR. I know I've got some wallets available. Okay. Plenty of pool options. I'm going to keep it probably to hero miners. If you used them in the past, I'm very happy with the results. But you can see with this pool, we're just on the topic of flight sheets. With this pool, I've got many more options. It's not as automated as it is, say, with Hiveon, right? I have to kind of choose what is closest to me. Now, I reside in the United States, so I'm probably going to just go ahead and hit up USA, And there's some options here for this one. It says USA nice hash. With some pools, they take for granted that you may be sending hash rate from nice hash and not your own rigs. It's an option here. It is an option here. Maybe you've got some, maybe you want to bolster some hash rate that you have going from nice hash with some local hash rate on a machine that you're running in your farm. And so you may want to mine to a nice hash, higher difficulty pool from within one of these flight sheets. Not required, right? It's not something that you have to do, but it's a possibility. So just be aware you could do that. But I'm just going to stick with USA based pools. I'm going to select two, right? I want to have one as a fallback just in case, for whatever reason, if the machine is struggling to connect to one of those pool servers, Hiveon and the mining software that I've chosen will automatically fall back to the next pool that I have lined up here. So it does make sense for me to have more than one pool selected for pools other than Hiveon. Hiveon is much more automated in terms of fallback and in terms of ping, in terms of figuring out which is the best for you. But for other pools, definitely I want to have that fallback. And I may want to only have, there we go, SSL URLs. So yeah, I want to keep my connection secure. All right, I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Select something. I'm just familiar. Man, I'm just familiar with XMR Stack, XM Rig. I realize the newer one is quite good, so I'm going to set that up there. But now I've got this full flight sheet, and all I have to do is click on XMR for me. Just, again, being descriptive, want to describe that I've got two algorithms going, one for the CPU, one for the GPU, and I may need to get more involved in making this run. But it's as simple as that. Once I have a worker selected, then I will simply choose that flight sheet and make it run. Now, I don't have my global flight sheets over here, but let's just see. I've got the 1660 rig here. If I did want to run a new flight sheet or run any kind of a flight sheet, I would just click on select flight sheet, and then from the drop down, I'll see which flight sheets are available and starred. See, I've got several here. So yeah, wow, old Bitcoin interest pool there. Bitcoin, now these are not going to be very good. See, ASIC miner right there. These are not going to be very good for the current rig. So I want to just narrow that down to Ethereum, and I can do that from the drop down. Yeah. So now as I scroll down, there's no ambiguity. I just see Ethereum-based flight sheets, and I can decide, all right, I much prefer this one, right? With Team Red Miner, maybe. Instead of what I've been using, I'll go with Team Red Miner. I don't know why I would do that in this case, right? Because this particular rig is an NVIDIA rig. But the point is, if I had a different miner that I wanted to try on my NVIDIA rig, I could select that other miner. All right, so another popular question that we get is, how do I check the temperature of memory? And that is a bit of an issue, I know, for a lot of people asking about monitoring rigs. Typically within GPUs, there's it's called a thermistor, a little hardware device that is there it's like a thermometer almost, that is measuring the temperature of the core. And in some GPU models, there is not reporting of the memory temperature. So unfortunately, that's a hardware limitation, and hardware and software limitation. So it's not something that Hiveon can fix until NVIDIA makes it something, exposes those controls. And once they do, once they do, that'll be available, as you can see, as you can monitor on other cards. But be sure that you're checking the official Hiveon forum thread with regards to memory temperature, because that'll be updated over time as those become available, right? But the Hiveon team is paying attention to that. They're monitoring that, and they're trying to add that functionality so that it's easier for miners to keep tabs on the temperature. So do stay dialed in there. And you can see links to the forum in the description of this video. And of course, at the main channel, the Hiveon channel, you can see it in the About tab of the Hiveon channel here on YouTube. So easy links. They're not hiding any information. They're trying to provide as much information as possible, being as open as possible. But how to view the logs, right? This is another question. People want to know, how can I figure out what just happened with my rig, right? Or what just happened with my farm even, right? From a bird's eye view. Let's jump into that. So you can access your logs in a couple different ways. Most important thing is to make sure that logs are enabled in the first place. You can enable them via logs on ampersand reboot. The logs on ampersand reboot command. How would I pass that to a rig? And this is a little less obvious for some people, so we are in kind of an intermediate territory, but this is where you'll have to use the run command tool right here. And we don't have this as one of the options here. So you, oh my gosh. So we will have to actually type that in, logs on, ampersand reboot. And then we would pass that command. Oh, and I apologize. Got to make sure that I have that properly hyphenated. That space will not pass as a command. But then I would click on run, and it would show me that that has been run. And then once your logs have been accumulated for a while, they can take up a bit of space on your device. So this is where, again, it does pay to have, if you wanted to put a larger capacity like a 32 or even a 64 gig SSD onto your rig, and then make sure that you expand the disk. And there is a command for that before we get started. So just really quickly, let's solve that problem. We want to make sure that, let's see, useful commands. We should have disk expand. And it looks like we don't have it. We don't have it here, but there is the disk expand command. And that's going to expand the operating system image of Hive OS or Hiveon OS onto the drive that you've installed it. Once you run your new rig, it's going to expand the amount of storage that's used on that drive to the full capacity of whatever that drive is. So for example, Hiveon only requires an 8 gig thumb drive. You could run Hiveon from an 8 gig thumb drive, no problems. But if you had a 64 gig SSD or whatever, a 128 gig or a 256, or maybe you had a 512 lying around and you threw it onto this rig, once you type in the disk expand command, either from the terminal directly on the machine itself or here from the dashboard, very simple to do, then once you run disk expand, you're going to have Hiveon address the full capacity of that drive, whether it's 64, 128, or 512 or whatever. Then you've got plenty of room for logs. It's really not going to be any issue at all. You won't run into space or storage issues. It's when you've got you're right up at the limit of only 8 gigs on a thumb drive that maybe you could have a problem with it taking up some space. So you wouldn't worry about it for an SSD or for a larger capacity USB drive. But over time, because of that constant writing to the USB drive, you will wear out your USB drive faster. So just be aware, if you have to have constant monitoring to logs, if you know that you want to keep logging of everything that happens on the device, then it's going to wear out that media faster. And I strongly recommend, and I believe the Hiveon team does as well, that you consider going with an SSD instead of a flash drive for that. So, but you can access those miner logs by going to var/logs/miner from the shell. And let's take a look at that. So now instead of passing a command, we would actually need shell access. So we would use that remote access here. And there we go. Could do shell in a box. I like it just because it's a very big representation. Oop. Okay, I'm unreachable right now for this machine. But I could tell it Hive shell start and then use shell in the box, or my favorite VNC client to be able to remotely access it, or I can just use something like Putty, right? And I can remote in that way. But I'd want to go to var/logs/miner from the shell, and then depending on what your favorite text tool is, I prefer Nano, so I would go Nano space var log miner, and then let's see, I could access it there by CDing into it, but then I can actually find the syslog in var log syslog. The Hiveon team is recommending that you check out MC, but you can use arrow keys to navigate within the file explorer, and then use enter to access the directory, F3 to view the log file, and then F10 to quit the file. You can use the following download a minor logs, following command to download a minor log straight off the dashboard. So there's a message file. So message file -f equals, let me go ahead and I can just put this on the screen. Yeah, let me use an example here. I'm gonna go ahead and type this on screen so it's a little bit more descriptive, guys. I apologize because it's a little bit too abstract. We're just talking about it. But as an example, maybe I want to get the team red minor log. Let me throw some text on screen right now. Hey, I'm gonna rescale this. All right, almost there. Thanks for your patience, guys. Really appreciate that. You can tell that we're live, can't you? This is an actual live stream, and we're actually interacting. And I just want you to know that we do see the questions coming in. Did see Zoe Poff asking about, please comment about the fees on Hiveon in different pools. Thanks, appreciate that. Got the hobbyist mine in the chat as well, and some others from the mining community here in the United States. Appreciate you being here live to be supportive and ask good questions. That definitely helps. So let me put this in one string. You can see this down below. There we go. It's a little bit simpler to see. And make it a little bit more clear. All right. But you would simply pass this command from within VNC, or if you were, again, logged in via PuTTY, just pass this command to that machine, and then you'd be able to see that log. But again, logging is one of those intermediate features where if you're the sort of person who needs to have access to logs or needs to check in, maybe after a long day of work and you're getting home and you're realizing I've had some system instability, the dashboard only showed me so much, now I want to dig through the logs, then this is how you'll get that done. All right, let's talk a little bit about some connection problems. This has definitely been a it's frustrating when your machine is not connected, but let's talk about that just a little bit. So an agent on your rig sends stats every 10 seconds to the server, and it starts as soon as the system boots. So your rig may be running, but the agent fails to reach the server for some reason, or the common problem is a dead file system, and the agent can't save temporary files to construct its package. For network diagnosis, there's a test script. Just run a net test. It will quickly ping and try to reach the server. The first thing that we recommend you do, though, is try to open an agent screen. What is the agent screen? The agent screen is it's basically Hiveon that's running on top of Linux, and it'll show you what it tries to send. It'll give you some hints about what's wrong. So especially if you have local access to the machine, or you are on the same network and you can quickly PuTTY into that machine, or just shell into that machine, a lot easier. But let me also just say there's a really great help page on this about troubleshooting connections. And I just want to show that on screen. Again, it's available in the description of this video. But connection problems, it's definitely in the knowledge base and these steps that I've gone over here. So run net test, pass that command on whatever method you're able to use in order to pass that command. But if you're from the dashboard and you're not connecting, obviously you can't pass it from the dashboard. You got to do that locally, or you have to log directly into the device and then, yeah, run that net test. But you got to make sure the agent screen is open on the device, not just the miner screen. So that is the main command area, the main interface of Hiveon on that rig. Okay, some other common problems, right? The miner is not overheated, but hash rate after turning on the miner is low. I mean, especially with LHR models coming out of NVIDIA, this has been kind of a frustrating thing recently. And I mean, obviously nobody likes to have low hash rate. That's just, that just ruins your day. But it can take 15 minutes for an ASIC or a machine to reach the standard hash rate after being rebooted. Definitely see this on some pools where the pool side hash rate, even though the local machine is telling you that it's achieved a certain hash rate, from the pool, it kind of ramps up, you know what I mean? Just slowly, this little curve until it's been standardized over maybe 15 minutes. It could take longer in the cases of some pools, what's being reported on the pool. So don't be too worried about that, but it takes about 15 minutes just for the machine itself to reach its full stabilized hash rate locally on the device. So thermals all being kind of like totally equalized across all hash boards or across all GPUs. So don't worry about that too much. If you're trying to check your hash rate instantaneously, it's not how it works. It takes about 15 minutes. And then on the pool, it can take a little bit longer, right, for that to level out. So just be aware of that. GPU rigs, yeah, they can reach a standard hash rate in about 1 to 2 minutes. Yes, maybe. And then in some cases, it can take longer than that. But I still think that with both ASICs and GPUs, the rule of thumb is 15 minutes. You got all your thermals fully equalized. Granted, with GPUs also, you'll know within about a minute or two if you have some other problem within a flight sheet or your overclocking settings, like maybe saw this the other day with T-Rex Miner, how with some algorithms, it will fail to turn your fans on unless in your overclocking you specifically tell the rig turn fans on. So that can be a little bit frustrating there. But small problems like that, you'll know very quickly. So what do I do if hash rate drops? Or what are some troubleshooting steps to take if hash rate drops? Check the following. If your mining equipment is not operating correctly, obviously your hash rate's going to drop. You know, like specifically like physical problems. If you don't have cables seated properly, if you are running your PSU at a load factor of greater than 80%, you can have some serious instability on that rig. And in the case of heavier hashing algorithms for GPUs like ProgPow, it's very easy to do that, right? Or KawPow for Ravencoin mining. Very easy to go above 80% load factor if you are on your math, if you're calculating for a lower number after overclocking and undervolting. If your overclocking and undervolting settings have not taken place, you can very quickly consume far more power than you intended to, and you can drive your PSU to above 80% load factor. That can cause instability. So be sure that on the hardware side, you haven't configured something incorrectly there. But then check to see if your mining configurations are valid, right? You gotta check to see your flight sheets are okay. Check to make sure that you are connected to the right pool. Check to make sure again that your overclocking settings are in place. But again, that may, as mentioned before, that may tie into whether or not you have the ample power supplied to your rigs. So think about those two things at the same time. But then also check to see if you got any network disruptions. Do you have a proper connection to your network, and are your firewall settings for your network configured appropriately? You figure if you have too aggressive a firewall in some cases, you're going to struggle to maintain connection to Hiveon and to your pools. So you've got to be aware of that. But that is kind of a final troubleshooting step. Don't worry about that first thing. It may be a bottleneck, but you'll know after you go through the other steps. You figure start by order of importance in terms of like what could burn your house down. Make sure your hardware is totally sorted first. And then why does the hash rate displayed on the miner differ from the one showed by Hiveon pool? Well, a time when the miner and the pool are updated differs. So again, there are intervals that are different for the local machine and then for the pool itself. For example, it's about the average of 15 minutes on the pool, and then the miner's data locally is refreshed every 5 seconds, right? It's a way faster interval. Poor network could lead to rejected shares. Again, as mentioned before, be sure that you have your network configured in such a way that it's secure, but that it's permissive enough or connected enough. I don't want to say permissive enough. But connected enough that you get fast updates. So you can get rejected shares that way. Also, there's a difference in calculating the hash rate reported by the miner and the pool. There can be unstable miner power and voltage, as mentioned before. Hash rate stolen by a third party or software, by third-party software. So be aware that Hiveon does try to vet all these different mining softwares, but I mean, the number of software titles has just exploded over time. Right, so just be aware that Hiveon can vet a lot of it and will try to vet a lot of it very, very carefully. But within the flight sheets, I mean, how many different Ethereum miners are there? Right, like just Ethereum alone there's just so many. There's a dozen, right? Nearly a dozen that are options there. And so Hiveon definitely can do some vetting, but they're not going to do code audits of every single thing, of every single mining software that is offered there. Generally speaking, the pull requests that are sent to Hiveon, they're going to try to honor those as fast as they can. So just be aware of that. And we got some questions coming in as well in the live chat. Thank you so much. Jeremy Hellman is asking about some AMD CPUs showing up as an unknown GPU in the overview tab, and then shows 9 GPUs in an 8 GPU system. The way to remove the CPU from the list. Plans to organize the GPU listings in a worker. Say we want to group all of the 3060s, then 60 Ti's, then 70s. It's hard to manipulate this by ordering your USB cables to the PCIe slots. That's a good question. We'll come to that in just a minute here, but really great question. Thanks for asking that live. It's awesome. Guys, if you're in the live chat, give Jeremy a thumbs up, tag him, say bravo, first to ask a question towards the end of the live stream. And I realize we're running a little bit longer than intended. We're going about an hour on this live stream, roughly. We're going to go a little longer just to make sure that the community has all the questions answered. But let's go through some of this content first. But Jeremy, just know we're going to come back to that question in just a minute here. So thank you for asking that. Definitely appreciate it. But back on the question of the pool showing a different hash rate than the miner, right? It's you can see just be aware that software that you use can steal hash rate. That's a possibility. The Hiveon team is doing everything they can to mitigate that problem, but they're not going to perform a free independent audit of every update of every software title. That would be dozens of free audits every week or two, right? That's so much more than one team can handle. So just be aware. If that is a problem, be vocal about it, of course. But if that does wind up being a problem, it's not something that Hiveon can necessarily stop right away until they know it's confirmed that many users have a problem with a certain mining software. So do be vocal in the forums if you do have that problem. But the hash rate on the pool is calculatable from the number of decisions made by the pool for a particular unit of time, and then displays the average value, right? So it's not going to show you your real-time like best hash rate. You may be tweaking, like doing some overclock tweaks and seeing that your hash rate is like just looks awesome. But on the pool, it's not going to reflect that right away. It's going to take some time. So also you want to decrease the ping of your machine to the pool. Again, as mentioned before, you may have a very, very restrictive firewall and local network settings. Just, you need to get that right into the range of high security, but low ping. And then effective miner hash rate on the pool is different since only accepted and stale shares are taken into account. So just know that that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. The number of accepted shares that you've done. But another common question is, my rigs won't start. My rigs won't start. It's a problem. So check the power, check the monitor to make sure you can boot Hive. It will definitely show you. And then if the problem is either in the hardware or, well, the problem could only be in the hardware or the software. But if you detect a software problem, re-image the operating system and using any available method that we covered in the beginning of this live stream. So it's very fast, actually. You might think, oh my gosh, that's so painful. I got to re-image it. What is this, Windows? No. Just give it a try. It normally works pretty fast. So what if you have a graphics card that's not detected? Well, if it's not detected, let's see. Yeah, if you think it's not detected, well, if the graphics card is detected but not mining, just update the drivers. In the case of NVIDIA, you can do that by going through the commands that we saw in the command side of the main dashboard. Right, so here you can update the drivers simply by passing a command from the dashboard if you don't have local access to the machine, or from PuTTY if you do have local shell access to the machine. So make sure your NVIDIA drivers are up to date. And check the riser, power supply, wire from the riser to the motherboard. So there's a hardware problem that's very, very common. Risers are known to burn out. I personally, when I'm setting up a new facility for a client or when I'm dealing with new hardware build out, I personally account for roughly 3 to 7%, 3 to 7% loss in risers, roughly over a year. And I just know that those need to be replaced over time. So why not? I know that might sound a bit extreme, but that's what I plan for. So we don't have problems like this over time, but it can happen. So check those connections, make sure that that's not the issue. Make sure also that your risers that they are not, you know, contacts touching from the backside soldering points of the USB connector to the next connector. This is a known problem with, for example, the ASRock H110 BTC Pro Plus, that they're so close together that you can get electrical shorting between one USB connector to the next. So put a little electrical tape around those, little old school hack for the H110, but that does it as well. Any other motherboards for GPU mining that have them seated way too close, that's just a quick hack. Get that done. Or if you have whatever, if you have like heat shrink, right, tubing to put over it, then maybe you can get fancy with it, but electrical tape does the job. But check all of your physical connections there. All right. What else? Some other common things there. Check the motherboard BIOS settings. You may have a problem with the motherboard BIOS having 4G decoding turned on or off, which may be an issue with that machine. You may have a problem with the GPU not being sensed by the motherboard. So if during power on self-test, your machine already doesn't see that GPU, then there's nothing that Hive OS is going to magically do to make that hardware sense the presence of a GPU. So check, you know, at increasingly fundamental levels of hardware and software. So yeah, and then also if you think there's a problem with the GPU, if it could be a problem with the GPU, like I've got, you know, we've all had dead GPUs, plug it into a known working slot and just give it a test. Or if you have a test bench with just one PCIe slot, then throw it into your test bench and run Hive OS on your test bench to make sure that there's not a problem with the hardware itself. It could just be the riser or the slot. All right, so what if your rig goes offline? So your rig is still mining, but it's displayed as offline in Hive, like you're checking the pool and you see an issue there. Well, or the machine is still running. For network diagnosis, there's a test script. You can just run it, run net test. We saw that test script already. So part of the troubleshooting connection. If your miner keeps restarting and giving errors, that's been known to happen. That's why we have these enhanced logs, and that's why we have so many other tools available within Hiveon. Ukshiva is also asking, hello, not sure if this has been answered yet. I had one of my rigs randomly go offline with no logs or error messages. Only way to fix it is to do a hard reset on the motherboard. Any possible solutions? Thanks. Thanks for asking that. Appreciate that. And Jitendra is asking, please explain hash rate watchdog. We'll talk about that briefly as well, guys. And I apologize. Had slightly longer explanations for a couple of beginner items, but want to make sure that the community just kind of sees that it's right. It's simple. And there's knowledge base for all this too. So we're going to have links to, if you prefer a written version of this, you'll see the links to the knowledge base. Rabbit Mining is in the chat. Sorry, guys. I'm going to say hello to all the US and Canadian based miners on YouTube, just because it tickles me to see them here, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the support. If you have questions, obviously let us know. You got some great content creators in the space who are stopping by because they use Hive OS. They use Hiveon. You know, when I first discovered Hiveon in 2018, started talking about it, like a lot of American or North American miners just said like, okay, cool. This, like, why would I use anything else? This has all the tools that I need for troubleshooting and way better knowledge base, way more functionality. But anyway, I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole. But talking about just what to do if the rig goes offline, just run the test script, net test. It's that simple. We already showed the troubleshooting page. And, oh, you know, we've got this. Let me make sure that this might be okay. This is the Russian version of this page. So just so you know that there are localized versions of this. Alrighty. But connection problems. So it's the other nice thing about Hiveon. Taking into consideration that there are miners in every area, but yeah, just a net test. It's that simple, guys. But if your miner keeps restarting, giving errors, just try to figure out which mining graphics card is giving you the errors, and then lower that card's core clock speed and maybe its memory clock speed. And then depending on the algorithm that you're mining, it may be more of one than the other. With Ethereum, it's very easy to mine, use lower core clock speeds. even if you have slightly higher memory clock speeds. And then with algorithms like ProgPow or variants of it, you may need slightly higher core speeds, but you can just scale that back, right, relative to the rest of the rig. What if your rig turns off or reboots? Well, first off, like before, guys, this is IT troubleshooting. Check the power supply and the cables. If your power supply is modular, check to make sure its connectors are all seated properly on the PSU itself and then seated properly on the graphics card. You don't want to have it only like partially seated. You can cause a spark. You can cause an issue. Definitely with overheating the sleeve, right? The shielding of that cable, and that can cause it to melt, and the magic smoke comes out, and everybody's angry after that. So check those connections, make sure you're okay. And then, you want to make sure that you don't have power supply overload. Again, you want to try it ideally. This is just like IT 101, 80% load factor at tops. If you're running greater than 80% of what your power supplies can do, you're running a serious risk. But if you have power problems, these are some things that you may need to pay attention to. But the connectors can burn on the power supply or the graphics card. Again, this is more common if you don't have the correct load factor for this PSU, and if you don't have good, stable, conditioned power. So having if you want to use a power conditioner or a PD, a good PDU will have power conditioning, and then 240 volt, if ideal, but you may not have that option available to you. But do make sure that you're not running it at above 80% load factor. It can be a problem. But you can replace and repair connectors. Far cheaper to replace an 8-pin PCIe power connector than to replace an entire GPU, right? Far more cost effective. So be on top of that. Check that out. But don't let the power supply be overloaded. And do try to have a backup power supply around so that you can do testing with a different power supply if you have that kind of instability or power problem with the machine failing intermittently. Again, PSUs do degrade, they do break over time, but they tend to break a lot faster when you run them at over 80% power load factor. So what do you do if the miner stops within Hiveon? Well, check the load average from the main dashboard, and I'm going to show you where that lives on the dashboard right now. So you can see right here, top corner, that's the power consumption for that rig, and this is your load average right here. But this is an indicator of the total load. It shouldn't exceed the number of cores in the system. So 0+ is an excellent indicator, right? But 1+ means that the system is loaded but not critical. 3 to 5 means that the system is loaded critically, and 10 signals that it's a critical overloaded system, an overly critical. And these are color coded as well. So for anybody who's not colorblind, you'll also see a call out in a specific color, letting you know the load average is rising up to unsustainable levels. But that's how you're going to see that, at least on the dashboard for Hiveon rigs. So yeah, definitely check for load average if you're seeing that the miner stops consistently. Maybe you changed your wallet and it has a 0 balance. Well, when you change the wallet, the balance will start from 0, and that's normal. Don't worry. What you earned earlier hasn't gone anywhere. The balance remained in the old wallet. You can continue mining until you get paid, or if your old wallet address was inactive for 7 days before the payment date, we're talking about Hiveon Pool here. If it was inactive for 7 days before the payment date, then the balance, as long as it's the minimum payout threshold, will be automatically withdrawn to the old wallet. So just be aware that happens on the 28th of each month. And if you mined on the 21st or later, the payout will be postponed until the 28th day of the following month. So it is tabulated from more than a week before. Just be aware of that. No, they're not stiffing you. No, they're not like gonna go use your funds in DeFi there's a schedule, guys. There's a payout schedule. How do you replenish the balance of your Hive OS pool? Well, it's pretty simple. There's a description of it in the knowledge base, which I'll pull up on screen right now. So part of FAQ. So paying for Hive OS, simply log into your account, go to the Your Funds tab and the billing tab, as you see right here. And then you'll have a personal address deposit tab. Select a provider, Hive right there, payment provider. Now select a coin from the drop-down list that you want to use. And you've got several options, but it's all ERC20 based at this point. And then you can click the add button and transfer funds to the address. It's really very, very simple. It's streamlined. This is from Hiveon listening to community feedback that they wanted something that was administered by Hiveon. So this is a big step, guys. It's a really big step. People ask how to update the NVIDIA and AMD drivers. Well, if you need to update the drivers, there is a guide for that as well in the FAQ. Gonna bring it up on screen as well. So for CUDA 10.x, simply use, again, pass the command NVIDIA driver update. And then it's kind of that simple. And begs the question, though, do you need to update? When people ask, like, how do I update? Well, you really should be asking, do I need to update? Because if your miners are mining, leave it alone. Hiveon is designed for you to, once you have settings in place that work, just leave it alone. Right? Just let it mine, let it earn for you. It's that simple. People may be wondering about like best tuning for finding overclocks. Let me just jump to a hack, right? This is the fastest way for you to find some tuning that makes sense for you. Overclocking settings. So from within a given worker page here, go to overclocking settings. And we have our templates here. Let's just say that we want to configure a new algorithm, get a new option here. And there we go. Ethereum, very common, right? And it already has some automatic options suggested there. Go to popular presets, see what people are doing, and then look for the GPU that you have, Ethereum, and it already knows the algorithm. And then just quickly check for a GPU that matches what you like or what you prefer to use or what is in your rig. So let's just say right now we're looking at an RTX 3070, right? Nice new card, some good availability. But then you got some different options here, right? Look, slight differences there. See that? The memory size is 7954 megabytes here, but it's 7980 on another model, 7976 on another one. Slightly different. So just be aware there is a little bit of a difference from one manufacturer to another. So don't presume that one size fits all, and then look for the approximate memory size that fits your model. So when I do that, it's going to filter this down to some others, and other people who use Hiveon, other users of the operating system and the dashboard, they'll contribute some of their best numbers. So here's somebody with memory up to 2200 and then power limit of 125. That apparently seems to work for them. But then others that have set a decreased core clock, or kind of shown decreased core clock, like for example, this one as well, right? Negative 500, and then 2400. Now this selected overclocking profile right there, it's just going to show me as a note right there, and then I'll have to manually add that into the fields here. So I may just say like, I really want to try 2400, and I'm gonna tell it that I need a fan right now, and then power limit of 130. But that's the fastest way to find really good overclock settings is check with the community. The community is very giving, and the Hiveon team definitely wants you to increase your hash rate and definitely wants you to increase your rewards. So they're going to keep placing these presets there as conspicuously as possible. All right. But yeah, that's the basic Q&A. Let me double check our live questions. See what else we got. And let's see. Jitendra is saying, I'm using Hive OS or Hiveon with a 16 gig pen drive the last 5 months. It's working fine. Yep. This is common. This is common for people to have that experience that an 8 gig or a 16 gig, a little USB drive, that it works great. Especially if you're not running, if you don't have logs turned on. If logs are turned on, you may run that, the life of that pen drive down a little faster, but otherwise That's okay. Jeremy asked before, some AMD CPUs, such as the 5600G, show up as an unknown GPU in the rig overview tab. This is then shows 9 GPUs and an 8 GPU system. Is there a way to remove the CPU from the list? There may not be an easy way for you to remove the CPU from the list, except in your mining software. Your mining software is going to know. For example, something like Team Red Miner is going to know the difference between a Ryzen 5600G and, say, a Radeon graphics card. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about from the overview having visual separation of that for now. The Hiveon team may be able to address that in the dashboard in the near future, but for right now, just make sure that your flight sheets are set up in such a way that if you want to use that 5600G, that AMD CPU for, say, mining Monero or something along those lines, that you just have your flight sheets set up correctly, and then make sure that you're receiving hash rate from the pools. But yeah, unfortunately on the visual overview, you may still see, like, for an eight card rig, you may see a ninth little green box in the visual overview. So apologies. Hopefully that's solved soon. And then Jeremy Hellman asked again, are there plans to organize the GPU listings in a worker, in a worker type? Say we want to group all the 3060s and then 3060 Ti's and 70s. Hard to manipulate this by reordering your USB cables to the PCIe slots. Well, the way that we overcome that, and I'm going to show you right now since we have an overclocking tab set up, is it shows us right here. So I've got a rig right now that has 3 cards in it, and it shows me GPU 0, GPU 1, GPU 2. Watch this as I space over. See what it just did right there? It's going to show me that this is the card that I'm making custom presets for right now. So maybe I want to have a slightly different overclock. So even though I had these numbers for my 3070, and I know I'm dealing with a 1660 now, so maybe on the 1660, I only want to decrease the core clock by 200 megahertz, right? So negative 200 there. Space over again, and that's a 1660 again. Just for argument's sake, maybe this one, maybe I know for this one also that the core is better at negative 220, right? So yeah, as I tab over, I'm going to see that for all of these. Again, tab over, shows me that I've got that specific model, and maybe for this one, I'm better off at 2000 megahertz overclock. And I'll do the same for there. And maybe for these 2 models, I know that I need to deal with more heat, right? Somehow. So 80 and 80, and then with power limit, I can do the same. I can drop that power limit maybe to 115 for both of these. So while no, I mean, there's not, I don't think that there's a plan right now. I can't speak for the Hiveon team as far as future plans for the product rollout, but I can tell you that right now, if you need to address the specifics of a given card in a given rig, the overclocking page is already designed to help you get really fine-tuned control of that. So it's a great question. So I don't know if the Hiveon team is going to have that roadmapped, but if you want that, ask for it in the forums or submit a pull request if if you're handy with it and just let them know, like, this is a feature that I really want. But be vocal, be interactive. The team is there listening. All right, double checking to make sure we have any other questions that were asked here live answered. And let's see. Well, Urksheva asked about one of the rigs randomly go offline with no logs or error messages, and we talked about that as well already, some potential system instability. Jitendra is asking about best overclock for NVIDIA 2060 Hynix memory. I showed you how to find some of the best overclocking settings, so you can do that from your own dashboard. You are empowered to use the settings that the community has provided, so make use of that. Guys, it's here for you. Hive OS is a great tool. Now moving to Hiveon OS. But it's a great tool, and the community is, I mean, there's no contest. It's the best in the world internationally, right? You can speak any language, and Hiveon is going to make it simple for your GPUs to just perform really well. All right. Appreciate you guys tuning in for this live session. Thank you so much to the Hiveon team for asking me to host this session. It's been a pleasure. Guys, remember that, Hiveon is the rebrand, so it's a fully vertically integrated brand and ecosystem. Available at hiveon.com. And appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you very, very soon.